Welcome back. Good morning. It is currently raining in the Little Bloomy outside, and I am quite excited about that because that means that I can stay at home and read all day. I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to read some. I've got my little looking up device here, and I think last time I said Fitzpatrick a lot. Darcy's name is Fitzwilliam Darcy, Esquire Fitzwilliam. And there was one other thing that I was going to mention. I think I'm going to start looking up like passages that I don't know, because I realize there's some passages that I just am like, what does it mean? And then I move on, and I need to like get better at inquiring mind, having an inquiring mind, and like really trying to understand. Because I'm about, when I finish this book, I'm planning on doing more books, and there are plenty of Jane Austen books that I actually don't know anything about. So I have a feeling I'm gonna have to just get better at inquiring and diving deep into a text, into a book. I think I'll read Emma or Sense and Sensibility next. I was planning on like going crazy and just reading like not even a Jane Austen book, like Jane Eyre, because I think just reading out loud is good for my brain. But I think I'm gonna stick to Jane Austen. We just really dive deep into her whole world. Finish all of the Jane Austen books. This is my year-long project. I've decided it's my year-long project that I'm just going to read, and this is going to help me read more books. I don't know anything about persuasion. I don't know anything about whatever. Let's just see what all of her books are real quick. Let's just see her catalogue of books. Let's just really quickly Jane Austen books. All Jane Austen books. Night swimming. Persuasion. Okay. Pride and Prejudice. Sensibility. Emma. Persuasion. Mansfield Park. I don't know anything about it. Northanger Abbey. Don't know a thing about it. Lady Susan. Couldn't say I know it. Wow, she has a lot of books. Oh, okay, maybe Jack and Alice. Couldn't tell you a thing about it. Yeah, I don't know anything about Sandition, Love and Friendship. Don't know it. Books, all Jane Austen books. I mean, there's like so many that are the Watsons. What sort is? I don't know anything about any of the. There are a lot. It might be taking more than a year. The rate we're going, it definitely might take me more than a year to get through the whole catalog, the complete Jane Austen. Maybe I should just get a set of all the books. Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, Mansfield Park, Emma, Northanger Abbey, and Persuasion. Okay, I'm gonna stick with those because a 6-book set feels nice. Because all these other things from Google, that would look like a lot. Okay. We're on chapter 33 of this one book, Pride and Prejudice, that we are going to finish, and we are going to continue on, and we're going to read 6 Jane Austen books this year. And that is ambitious, and I'm excited about it, and I didn't make that a resolution, because January is a time for introspection, and so I don't really like to make I don't really like to make the word that people resolutions at that time, things have to sort of shake out. I don't really like to be told what I celebrate New Year's on my birthday. Okay. We just had an interesting moment with Mr. Darcy where he was like, he came into her house while she was alone, which I assume is pretty uncouth. Am I using that right? Uncouth? Is that, I haven't seen it in this book, but all these literature words are coming out of my mouth now that I'm reading this out loud more. Person or appearance behavior lacking good manners and refinement or grace. Yeah, he came in quite uncouth and just like sat and chatted with Elizabeth while she was alone. And Charlotte was like, girl, he likes you. And he was like, do you think you like being close to your house? And I had to look up what that meant because it was like, do you. Is Pemberley too far from your place? So we've had a fun little convo with Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth alone. And I think that's where we left off. And, you know, we all agree that Colonel Fitzwilliam, why do we pronounce it Colonel when it just, I mean, I know it's probably like a French term. Why do we pronounce Colonel with an R? Thank you so much for Colonel. Oh, there's a whole video on it. The written style continued to reflect the older form, while the spoken form, competing against it, as it were, reflected the other. Colonel. Given the Middle French form, the R sound in the pronunciation of some Americans is not strange. How was it originally pronounced? Colonel was spelled Colonel, but pronounced Colonel. Oh. Let's just do this real quick. I promise. I'll tell you when I'm going to start reading at the bottom. I promise. Colonel pronunciation.
Colonel.
Oh my gosh. Colonel. Colonel. I feel like that scared me a little bit. Okay. me. Okay. Chapter 33. More than once did Elizabeth, in her ramble within the park, unexpectedly meet Mr. Darcy. She felt all the perverseness of the mischance. That's also what I wanted to do, because I saw this word right as we started, and they say this word a lot, and I don't think it means what we think it means. Perverseness, Jane Austen, is what I am going to do, because perverse. Perverseness, Jane Austen. Can I get a definition, babe? Definition, babe? Just deliberate stubbornness. Huh. Deliberately deviating from what is good. Perverse in poetry. Stubbornly contradictory. Turned away from, or askew. Turned away from what is right. Huh. I feel like I looked it up on my phone and there was a different definition, which is very interesting. Pride and Prejudice. Okay. Back in. She felt all the perverseness of the mischance. That's what it means. It's like a mischance. Okay. She felt all the perverseness of the mischance that should bring him where no one else was brought, and to prevent its ever happening again, she took care to inform him at first that it was a favourite haunt of hers. How could occur a second time, therefore, was very odd. Whoa, she said, that's my favourite spot. And he said, oh cool, I'll be back every day. Yet it did, and even a third. It seemed like willful ill nature or a voluntary penance, for on these occasions it was not merely a few formal inquiries and an awkward pause, then away, but he actually thought it necessary to turn back and walk with her. She said, what is this fool doing? He never said a great deal, nor did she give herself the trouble of talking or of listening much, but it struck her in the course of their third don't know this word. Rencontre? It's French. I'm certain of it. Como se dice rencontre? Conjugation French in English. In English, please? Encounter. Oh.
Rencontre.
Oh, what?
Rencontre.
rencontre. That's a lot. It's so much rencontre. Excuse me, rencontre. It does sound like you're coughing. Sorry, French people. It does sound rencontre. Encounter. But here it says rencontre. In the course of their third rencontre, that he was asking some odd, unconnected questions about her pleasure in being at Hunsford, her love of solitary walks, and her opinion of Mr. and Mrs. Collins's happiness. And that in speaking of Rosings and her not perfectly understanding the house, he seemed to expect that whenever she came into Kent again, she would be staying there too. His words seemed to imply it. Could he have Colonel Fitzwilliam in his thoughts? She's not picking up at all what he's putting down. She supposed if he meant anything, he must mean an allusion to what might arise in that quarter. It distressed her a little, and she was quite glad to find herself at the gate in the pales opposite the parsonage. She was engaged one day as she walked in her perusing. I wasn't expecting perusing to be in this novel. She was engaged one day as she walked in perusing Jane's last letter and dwelling on some passages which proved that Jane had not written in spirits, when instead of being again surprised by Mr. Darcy, she saw on looking up that Colonel Fitzwilliam was meeting her. Everybody now knows of my secret hiding place, and that is upsetting to me. I don't like my secret hiding places being known. Putting away the letter immediately and forcing a smile, she said, I did not know before that you ever walked this way. Nobody has, ever, until me. I have been making a tour of the park, he replied, as I generally do every year, and intend to close it with a call at the parsonage. Are you going much farther? Farther. Hold on, because she says it every single time. Maybe farther versus further, because I feel like I'm going cuckoo. Farther means greater distance in a literal physical sense and can be measured, whereas further is a figurative general. So she said, I thought on it she should have said further, and now, are you going much farther? That makes sense. Was there a distinction? Because Jane Austen, when did it start? This might be too much. Okay, when did it start? Farther originated from a variant of Middle English. When should farther? I know that. In the UK usage, farther is almost unheard of, and further is used for every meeting. Not in Jane Austen. Fascinating. I want to know when this changed. Further and farther, a theory by the New Yorker. That's really funny. Wow, it's definitely talked about. That's interesting that this is from 2010. It says farther is almost unheard of in the UK English. But that's only the only one Jane Austen uses. I'll get over it. Okay. He asked, are you going much farther? Which is the correct way to use that word. No, I should have turned in a moment. And accordingly, she did turn, and they walked towards the parsonage together. Do you certainly leave Kent on Saturday? Said she. Yes, if Darcy does not put it off again. Darcy's putting off leaving again. She is not picking up what he is putting down. Whoa. But I am at his disposal. He arranges the business just as he pleases. She's going to be all pissed off about that because he pleased to make Bingley leave. And if not able to please himself in the arrangement, he has at least pleasure in the great power of choice. I do not know anybody who seems to enjoy the power of doing what he likes than Darcy. I do not know anybody who seems more to enjoy the power of doing what he likes than Mr. Darcy. He likes to have his own way very well, replied Colonel Fitzwilliam, but so we all do. It is only that he has better means of having it than any others, because he is rich, and many others are poor. I speak feelingly. A younger son, you know, must be inured to self-denial and dependence. Inured. Sorry, there's a lot to look up on this chapter. I know I'm only one page in. Inured. Past tense. Right. Accustomed to something. Okay, he's used to it. Inured. Like endured. Come into operation, take effect. Accustomed to something, especially something unpleasant. Okay. Inured. I-N. I spelt it wrong. I-N. One N. A younger son, you know, must be inured. Am I saying it right? Inured to self-denial and dependence. In my opinion, the younger son of an earl can know very little of either. Now seriously, what have you ever known of self-denial and dependence? When have you been prevented by want of money from going wherever you choose, or procuring anything you had a fancy for? These are home questions, and perhaps I cannot say that I have experienced many hardships of that nature, but in matters of greater weight I may suffer from want of money. Younger sons cannot marry where they like. Interesting. Unless where they like women of fortune, which I think they very often do. Younger sons always going after the fortune. Our habits of expense make us too dependent, and there are not many in my rank of life who can afford to marry without some attention to money. Is this, thought Elizabeth, meant for me? And she coloured at the idea, but recovering herself, said in a lively tone, And pray, is the usual price of what is the usual price of an earl's younger son? Unless the elder brother is very sickly, I suppose you would not ask above £50,000. He answered her in the same style, and the subject dropped. He didn't want to talk about it. To interrupt a silence which might make him fancy her affected with what had passed, she soon afterwards said, I imagine your cousin brought you down with him chiefly for the sake of having someone at his disposal. Ooh, I wonder he does not marry, to secure lasting convenience of that kind. I'll just marry somebody to have somebody at my constant disposal. That's so funny. But perhaps his sister does as well for the present, and as she is under the sole care, he may do what he likes with her. No, said Colonel Fitzwilliam. That is an advantage which he must divide with me. I am joined with him in the guardianship of Miss Darcy. Oh, uncle, brother, cousin, Colonel Fitzwilliam. Are you indeed? And pray what sort of guardian do you make? Does your charge give you much trouble? Young ladies of her age are sometimes a little difficult to manage, and if she has the true Darcy spirit, she may like to have her own way. As she spoke, she observed him looking at her earnestly, and the manner in which he immediately asked her why she supposed Miss Darcy likely to give them any uneasiness convinced her that she had somehow or other got pretty near the truth. She directly replied, You need not be frightened. I never heard any harm of her, and I dare say she is one of the most tractable creatures in the world. She is a very great favourite with some ladies of my acquaintance, Mrs. Hurst and Miss Bingley. I think I have heard you say that you know them. I know them a little. Their brother is a pleasant gentleman-like man, and he's a great friend of Darcy's. Oh, yes, said Elizabeth dryly. Mr. Darcy is uncommonly kind to Mr. Bingley, and takes a prodigious deal of care of him. Care of him? Yes, I really believe Darcy does take care of him in those points where he most wants care. From something that he told me in our journey hither, I have reason to think Bingley very much indebted to him. But I ought to beg his pardon, for I have no right to suppose that Bingley was the person meant. It was all conjecture. What is it you mean? It is a circumstance which Darcy could not wish to be generally known, because if it were to get round to the lady's family, it would be an unpleasant thing. Do tell, do tell, do tell. I couldn't even possibly know what you're talking about. Go on. You may depend on my not mentioning it. And remember that I have not much reason for supposing it to be Bingley. What he told me was merely this, that he congratulated himself on having lately saved a friend from the inconveniences of a most imprudent marriage, but without mentioning names or any other particulars, and I only suspect it to be Bingley from believing him the kind of young man to get into a scrap of that sort, and from knowing them to have been together the whole of last summer. Did Mr. Darcy give you reason for this interference? I understood that there were some strong objections against the lady. And what arts did he use to separate them? He did not talk to me of his own arts, said Fitzwilliam, smiling. He only told me that I have what I have told you now. Elizabeth made no answer, and walked on, her heart swelling with indignation. After watching her a little, Fitzwilliam asked her why she was so thoughtful. I am thinking of what you have been telling me, said she. Your cousin's conduct does not suit my feelings. Why was he to be the judge? You are rather disposed to call this interference officious? Officious, like offending? Officious. Officious. Assertive of authority in an annoying, domineering way, especially with regard to petty or trivial matters. Whoa, intrusively enthusiastic in offering help or advice. Interfering. Ooh, I like that word. Where is it? Effusive. Effusious. Oh, no.
Officious.
Officious. You guys, that woman. Officious. Okay. I do not see what right Mr. Darcy had to decide on the propriety of his friend's inclination, or why, upon his own judgment alone, he was to determine and direct in what manner his friend was to be happy. But, she continued, recollecting herself, as we know none of the particulars, it is not fair to condemn him. It is not to be supposed that there was much affection in the case. That is not an unnatural surmise, said Miss Fitzwilliam. But it is a lessening of the honour of my cousin's triumph very sadly. It is a lessening of the honour of my cousin's triumph very sadly. This was spoken jestingly. I did not portray it jestingly because I couldn't pronounce some of the words, but it was spoken jestingly, if you can imagine that. But it appeared to her so just a picture of Mr. Darcy that she would not trust herself with an answer, and therefore, abruptly changing the conversation, talked on indifferent matters until they reached the parsonage. There, shut into her own room, as soon as their visitor left them, she could think without interruption of all that she had heard. It was not to be supposed that any other people could be meant than those with whom she was connected. There could not exist in the world two men over whom Mr. Darcy could have such boundless influence. That he had been concerned in the measures taken to separate Bingley and Jane she had never doubted, but she had always attributed to Miss Bingley the principal design and arrangement of them. Oh, she had no idea Mr. Darcy had such a big impact. She always thought it was Miss Bingley. I didn't know that either. Interesting. If his own vanity, however, did not mislead him, he was the cause. His pride and caprice were the cause of all that Jane had suffered and still continued to suffer. He had ruined for a while every hope of happiness for the most affectionate, generous generous heart in the whole world, and no one could say how lasting an evil he might have inflicted. There were some strong objections against the lady, were Colonel Fitzwilliam's words, and those strong objections probably were her having one uncle who was a country attorney and another who was in business in London. Okay. That was her made up. She made that up. Because last time I read it, I was like, what? Wait, why does Mr. Darcy hate her uncle? I was confused by that. To Jane herself, she exclaimed, there could be no possibility of objection, all loveliness and goodness as she is, her understanding excellent, her mind improved, and her manners captivating. Neither could anything be urged against my father, who, though with some peculiarities, has abilities Mr. Darcy himself need not disdain, and respectability which he will probably never reach. When she thought of her mother, her confidence gave way a little. but she would not allow that any objections there had material weight with Mr. Darcy, whose pride she was convinced would receive a deeper wound from the want of importance in his friend's connection than from their want of sense, and she was quite decided at last that he had been partly governed by this worst kind of pride, and partly by the wish of retaining Mr. Bingley for his sister. She does not like him at all. The agitation and tears which the subject occasioned brought on a headache, and it grew so much worse towards the evening that, added to her unwillingness to see Mr. Darcy, it determined her not to attend her cousins to Rosings, where they were engaged to drink tea. Mrs. Collins, seeing that she was really unwell, did not press her to go, and as much as possible prevented her husband from pressing her. But Mr. Collins could not conceal his apprehension of Lady Catherine's being rather displeased by her staying at home. Gosh, I don't like that. I'm sick, let me stay at home. Chapter 34.